Hello, John. Hello. Hello. Welcome to SaugaTalks.
Well, thank you for having me, Irene.
Perfect. So for our audience out there, we are very privileged and honored to have here today John Reynolds, a colleague of mine from some time ago, not recently, unfortunately, but some time ago. And John is doing wonderful things with his life. He is building great stuff. His latest app called Trules. Okay, John will talk about it more. But what we would like to focus today is John acquired GraphQL skills not long ago, but he rose it to the level where he is kind enough to share his wisdom. So we're going to be talking about GraphQL for everyone, for business people, for half technical, for half business, and everyone in between. So GraphQL is our topic. And I asked John to introduce, without any complex terms or any too technical details, to us commoners, why people talking about GraphQL, why developers bringing this buzzy news to their management, to their business counterparts, to executives. What do we commoners need to know about it? So John, take it away.
Great. Thank you, Irene. So, yeah, I mean, and Irene will have to beat me up several times because I will go into the technical jargon without even knowing I am. But basically, so just what I'm doing right now, I am building a communication app for making decisions, for reaching agreement online. And I am using GraphQL and some other libraries that are very closely related to it. And I'm doing that because I need it for my application. And it's, I would like to introduce it this way. You really can't have a discussion about GraphQL without talking about Facebook.
All right.
It's Facebook, right? And in a way, Trules that I'm working on, it's sort of like Facebook. In other ways, it's not. But you guys probably all know Facebook. So let's talk about why Facebook sponsored GraphQL. You know, what did they need? All right, so what is Facebook? Okay, Facebook is a social media application. It's a communication application. And in building this application, Facebook found that they were having some real problems with other technologies, with other database technologies and things like that. They needed something a little bit different. Well, you know, Twitter is also a social media application, and they didn't come up with GraphQL, so why did Facebook? Well, if you look at what Facebook does, Facebook is about sharing news articles. And it's not just about sharing the news articles, it's about people's reactions to the news articles. And it's all about having a bunch of people looking at a news article at the same time and thumbs up, thumbs down, leaving comments, having discussions. And what Facebook needed was they needed a way of getting all of that information from the cloud, from these devices into the cloud and then distributed to other devices like this. And so they brought together a bunch of stuff and sponsored GraphQL. Now, GraphQL is how I get my data from the cloud to my device and from my device to the cloud. That's what GraphQL is. It's not really a database. It's really they call it an application programming interface. It is the language that I use to get the data that I need and to push the data out that I need to push back. And if you think about Facebook, and it's actually true of Trules, also the app that I'm working on, or GitHub uses GraphQL also. It's mostly about getting information and getting these little updates so that you know that there was an update, so that you know that, you know, I should go read this update, right? It's really not about pushing a lot of data into the cloud because, you know, most people are gathering instead of pushing. Okay, so it's optimized for gathering.
Mhm.
And then the other thing that's very important is this is a highly interactive app, right? I want in order to hook me, right? Facebook has to update this all the time and let me know what's changed. They want to hook me, and they do. By the way, I check this thing like every 5 minutes. And every 5 minutes, it's got to be up to date. That was the problem that they had to solve. So GraphQL is not just a way of, it's a great way that the programmer who's programming for this thing can tell the server, I need this information. And it's a great way for the programmer using this device to push information. But the other thing is these notifications. And GraphQL, at least the way that I'm using it, it always has this ability for me to also, from my device, tell the server what I am interested in so that I get updates on that. And I get updates on only the information that I'm going to be displaying on a particular screen, right? So it allows me, you may have heard the term query. Query is, basically just saying, this is what I want. This GraphQL is really good at in a very natural way of saying, this is the information that I want. And the interface here is written in a language called JavaScript, mostly. Most people are using JavaScript. And it really doesn't. The point is, the way that JavaScript defines data, the way that data looks to a JavaScript programmer is the same way as the GraphQL data looks. So they don't have to do this translation. So there's a very nice match between the person who's writing this code, your programmer who's writing this code, and the mechanism that they use for getting the information. Now, out there in the cloud, back there, that's a different problem. That is dealing with efficiently getting stuff from disks and off of disks and transferred around. Yeah, GraphQL doesn't do that. It's not for that. And like if you've been in business for a long time, you've got all these back-end systems. Well, they're still the same. It's about this. So let's say you're a bank, right? Your back-end systems are the same back-end systems. This is the way that you talk to your customers. All right. Now the other thing, let's think about Facebook, right? Why did they need something different? They're changing the front end all the time. They're learning from their users what needs to be on a particular screen. They're learning that, these pieces of information almost always go together. These hardly ever go together. And GraphQL allows them to very, very quickly change the data that they're getting for their screen. So as they update their screen, they can update the data. They can use that API to get that data. Now, as soon as these apps started showing up, there was something that your developers probably also talked to you about, this REST interface. Well, I don't even remember what it stands for anymore, but it was a way of getting information. The problem with the first generation of REST was it required a lot of programming to change anything. A lot of programming to change anything. With GraphQL, very little programming changes were necessary to change the information that you needed to get, right? So okay, your developers are telling you that you need GraphQL.
That will be my next question here. Absolutely, John. Okay. Right now, I want to leave. Okay, we understood Facebook invented it, they're using it. Why did it go beyond Facebook? What happened?
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, that's
why others using it? Why do they need it?
The reason that the primary reason that GraphQL went beyond Facebook is because the people at Facebook are brilliant and generous.
Very true.
They open sourced GraphQL. What that meant was that everything that Facebook had developed for GraphQL, I could use, right? And of course, it cost me money to use anything, but I could use it. And people like me could not only use it, we could improve it. We could give back to it, and we could grow it to meet our needs, right?
Fantastic. This is open to everyone, right? Platform point.
Open to everyone. And the other thing is, because it's open to everyone, I was able to get started with it very inexpensively. Okay,
Tell us about
now,
it. Yes, tell us
yeah,
about your use case, right? Why you decided to go for it? Where
yeah,
you're
well,
applying? Yep.
well, I decided to go for it because of a presentation that a good friend of mine named Eric Streeper gave in Santa Fe. I'm in Santa Fe, New Mexico. We have a little programmers group that gets together, and he showed us GraphQL. I think it was 3.5 years ago, something like that. And he showed it to us. So he demonstrated how easy it was to define the information that you want to get and get that information. And the tool itself, when they did a brilliant thing, because when they made it available to everybody, they made the let's call it a testing tool available, an interactive testing tool, so that you could kick the tires and you could try it. So I was able to very easily, define the data that I wanted to get back from the server and see how I would use that application programming interface. And it just hooked me. And it hooked me because I'm a one-man shop, and I wasn't quite sure what I needed. So I was designing my front end and my back end at the same time. I needed this thing that talked between those two things that was very easy to adapt. And that's what hooked me. So it was available very inexpensively to get started. It came with that critical mass of not just something that was useful, but like this test harness that I could kick the tires and make sure that it worked for my application. Mm-hmm. And then what it did was what I needed. In the app that I'm building, it is a communication app. And so I needed that one person types it in, everybody sees it. I needed that. And this does that beautifully and easily. And so I can concentrate on the stuff that's unique about my app and utilize the stuff that was already there. So if your application needs that, then maybe GraphQL is the best solution. If your business applications don't need that, if your needs are different, like for example, TurboTax, right? I love TurboTax. Without it, I'd be dead. TurboTax doesn't have that rapid. There's nobody else typing into TurboTax somewhere else that I need to see what they typed in. They don't need it. Now they might have a version of TurboTax in the future that does that, but they don't need it today. I have no idea if they're using it or not, but the reasons why I needed it, they don't need. They have a really well-defined what they're going to do. It's the tax code, and it's just really just one person interacting with the server. Mm-hmm. So no, they don't really need it. Could it help them? Yeah, it might help them.
So what I understand, nobody's pulling data from from them, right, back to them. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right. And this is the lesson that anybody who's non-technical, and even those of us who are technical, this is the question you have to ask. Does that shiny widget, does that tool provide something that I need? Right. Mm-hmm. And of course, there's all sorts of levels of need, and it might make it convenient. It might be a good thing anyway. I mentioned before that GraphQL and JavaScript, they speak the same language. Mm-hmm. And for me, this was great because everything that I've written on my server is JavaScript, and everything that I've written on my front end is JavaScript. And GraphQL speaks to both of those really, really well. So it made it simpler for me to stick to one language, one way of describing data. It made it simpler for me because I have the absolute smallest development team imaginable. It's
the best, though, the best.
Right.
Like the smartest, the easiest to manage, I hope.
There you go. Yeah, very, very easy for me to manage. Now, I'm biased. I'm very biased Back in when Irina and I met at IBM, product we were working on there, same thing. It was JavaScript all over the place. I loved the simplicity of one language. All right. That is kind of a secondary concern, though. I wouldn't switch to GraphQL just for that, but it was kind of like a bonus. And there's all sorts of other ways to have that monolingual, same language on the front and the back. It was important to me. What I see as problems, and you should talk to your technical team about this, is when they bring in stuff. Let's say I brought in something using a different language like Erlang or, anyway, because there's a million of them. That is introducing complexity, and the complexity may be worth it. It may be worth it, but maybe it's not. For me, being just this one person trying to build, this hopefully successful application, that was a complexity that I could do without. Was that the primary reason I chose GraphQL? No. The primary reason I chose GraphQL was because it made it really easy for me to be designing the information that I needed on my screens at the same way as I was designing my API for getting that information. And then it had this update capability, update everybody on what's changed. Mm-hmm. That's why I went with GraphQL. The other stuff was benefits, and I mean, I think it's wonderful, but no, I wouldn't have picked it just for that. And I think that's a very important thing, is that when you're dealing with technical people, try to get to why they want to use it, and have the discussion about how does why they want to use it match up with your business need, right? And then if they mesh, then be very supportive. Sometimes that you probably don't realize this, but sometimes technical people want to use stuff because it's new and it's sexy.
Exactly. Right. That's where I'm getting with it, John. Absolutely, because developers get bored. They
get bored.
Stuff to play with. But on management side, on executive side, I have business to run, okay? I want to keep my developer happy, but it's not their sandbox over here, right? Where is the balance, John? Yeah. Right.
And there's value in helping them not be bored. There is. Absolutely. Keep them happy.
But I have business. I need to bring money in, right? I need to
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And if you don't make profit, it doesn't matter whether they're bored or not. You've got to.
We're having all the fun in the world, right? But that's not the purpose. My business exists, right?
Yes. And by the way, if you remind them of that, they'll get it. So when dealing with the excited developer type, and see, here I am, all right, because I'm wearing all three hats. I am development, I am marketing. Yeah, I'm everything.
Yeah.
Even me, I have to tell myself, oh, you know what? If you don't get this out in the next months, you're going to run out of money, right? You have a runway. And I think that this is the thing about all these conversations. And that's why, Irene, I'm really glad you're doing these talks, because we need to communicate better. The technical and the business need to communicate better. I do think that GraphQL is, because of its nature, it is a great way for the business people and the technical people to talk about the information that is needed. All right. So it's also a communication mechanism, because I'm very technical, but I know people who aren't, and I can show them, this tool that will show them the GraphQL schema. It shows them the information, right? And then we can have a discussion about the information. And since we have this communication mechanism called GraphQL to basically take notes of what information we need, we're less likely to misunderstand what we're talking about. Irene and I have a long history with business process management notation. Same thing. What's the value there? The business person and the person who's going to implement the process, code it, automate it, they have a common communication mechanism. I don't know if that's what GraphQL was a goal of GraphQL, but it certainly is true. And so I can have a discussion, because I do have people, it's not just me, I have a lot of, I'm a member of the Santa Fe Business Incubator, and people there are a great help to me. I'm really a fan of business incubators, by the way. So if you're trying to do your own thing, find your local business incubator. But I'm able to show them this kind of geeky, data centric, whatever, and talk about, okay, so I've got an account, and that account has members, and those members have posts, and those posts have this, and I can type in the little GraphQL query, get the data back, and they get it. And then we can have the discussion about, well, what other information would you need? And they understand what I mean when I say information, and I understand what they mean, and we have this mechanism for writing it down really, really quickly, and then I go off in my little room in a code. So I think it's
standard language, right? That different entities can communicate with, right? That's what my understanding is.
So yes.
Standard is good in this case.
And the thing about it is, since GraphQL was created, to support this, and everybody knows about this, and they know about the information that's here, we're talking apples and apples, all right? If I tried to show these people my SQL schema, because my underlying database is a SQL database, but SQL is about efficiently doing queries and getting information. It's not at the right level. So it's like when you're having discussions, business, technical, your discussion really needs to be about that interface, that I need this information. This is the quantity of information I need. This is how frequently it's going to be updated. This is who I want to be able to see the information. This is who I don't want to be able to see the information. That discussion, for your business folks, you need to kind of push you might not be comfortable because you're worried about saying the wrong thing or whatever. Okay, you need to learn how to communicate in that way, because the better you can communicate, not at the goofy bytes and bits level, but at I need this kind of information, and I'm going to have I'm expecting to have 1 million users or 10 users. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that matters. That's the kind of stuff you need to communicate so that you get the right thing from your technical folks. And things like GraphQL, if they help you do that, that's another reason to use them. If they get in the way, if they make it, to where it doesn't make sense, then no. And that's true of every, back in our business process management notation days, there were certain kind of things that it just didn't work for. And that's why it didn't work. It did not work when you were talking about case management, because case management is different than process management. So finding the right language for communicating your needs, and if your needs are kind of similar to what Facebook's needs were, then GraphQL might help you with that, right?
Are you familiar, John? Are you familiar with kind of what industry use cases? I mean, I'm sorry for using this language here, but just applications, right, where GraphQL proven to be very successful and very important, right?
Yeah, well, I think GraphQL, obviously Facebook, right? Facebook,
that's the best example, right? But if I'm not a Facebook, right, I doubt I will be second Facebook.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, I don't actually have a list, but many of the news type services are using it. Anything that has that, I need updates. Now, this is going to my technical, there's something called GitHub that your developers probably know about. It is a place where you store your source code out there in the cloud. And it's great because if you have a distributed team, they can all get the data from the cloud. They were a very early adopter of GraphQL because when you think about it, what they're doing, well, what does this geeky technical sharing code have to do with Facebook? Ah, sharing. You're sharing information, and it's incredibly important that people who need that code know that it's changed very reliably, very quickly. So they adopted it too. And I bet, well, I don't really know, but if you look out there, any online business that has that back and forth, they're very likely, if they're not using GraphQL, they're using something like GraphQL. And the ones, but it goes back to also the information that's being transferred. So like, I don't think Twitter's using it right now. They may be, and I apologize if I'm wrong about that, but they didn't need it. They didn't really need it because they're sending little 40-character text blocks back and forth. They're not dealing with this structured information like I am. Okay, so I'm part of what my app is doing. Somebody asks a question and people are proposing answers, right? Well, I need to know if somebody has proposed a new answer immediately, because I need to go look at that answer and decide whether or not I'm going to support that answer or not. And as I support an answer, everybody needs to know that I'm now supporting this answer so that they can, react accordingly, right? It's all about reaction.
So I'm sensing financial applications, right? When you need immediate, right, pulling data from certain sources, right?
Pulling the information. I think it's mainly that interactive capability. So for example, my stock app that I have on my phone, I am getting updates, right? And so when I am looking at that, I think it goes back to, if you see that little red notification thing, that's not from GraphQL. But if your app has something has changed, and you really ought to go look at it, they may be using GraphQL to get that information, or they're using something like GraphQL. And I keep saying like GraphQL because I already know it's inevitable that your developers will want you to use the next, whatever comes after, because something will come after. And that just brings us to when do you need to go to that next thing?
That's exactly my next question, John. Believe it or not, we're thinking alike. Because I wanted to ask you, what do you think when people hear about technical debt? Meaning that
yes, technical debt.
Right.
Right. We loved technical debt is a great thing.
Exactly. What is it? Let's spell it out. It's cost of not upgrading.
The cost of not
right?
upgrading.
What is it?
Yes. The cost of not upgrading. And it's real. It's real. If you don't upgrade your libraries, if you don't keep current, there will come a time in the future when you need to. And when you need to, if you haven't been making these incremental changes all along, the cost is going to be bigger. Okay, now this has happened with me. I started using GraphQL for Trules 2.5 years ago. Okay, during that time, it has improved in many, many ways. And I am using that Apollo GraphQL that you mentioned. Love those guys. Those are wonderful people. They're changing things all the time. Well, some of the changes that they're making might matter to me. Some of the changes that they're making don't matter to me. But I can't just take the changes that matter to me, right?
Right. You have to get the whole package.
You have to get the whole package. It's all or none. So I have screwed up a few times in the past. Oh, I know you're shocked.
Exactly. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Didn't do the incremental updates for a series of months or something like that. And then something broke, because I'm not just using the GraphQL package from Apollo, I'm also using all these other things from other people. And these packages are built to work with each other, right? So I needed the new package over here, but it wouldn't work with the old package over here. So it took me several days instead of an hour to do the upgrade, right? Because I hadn't.
What behind on one of the components, right? I understand, yeah.
So your developers, when they're talking about technical debt, yes, pay attention to them, and you have to budget that in. It's just a fact of life that if your code base relies on external stuff, and it could be free external stuff or it could be paid external stuff. So in other words, all software now relies on external stuff. It all does. You need to have in your budget to be taking these little incremental changes along the way and just factor that in, because it's a cost of doing business. And your developers may say that the technical debt is so big that, you know, we're going to shut down your business, and you just can't let that happen. So you have to be preventative. You have to, it's like a tax. Okay, it's like a tax. You know, if we don't pay our taxes, we're fine until they catch us, and then, you know, then we get paid. So it's the same thing. If you don't pay your debt as you're going along, the debt's going to get bigger and it's going to cost you a lot. Now that's a little bit different than if they come in and say, we want to switch from SQL to GraphQL, from GraphQL to whatever comes next, right? It's a little bit different. In that case, you need to look at the cost of staying with the existing platform versus the cost of moving to the new platform. And you really need to look at that carefully, because there will come a point in time, there always is, where things have changed so much that it's better to just make this fresh start. That's what Facebook had to do. They said that the existing stuff was just, and think about it, before we had these apps on our phones, before we had these, we didn't need what Facebook needed. So trying to adapt staying on the older technology, it was not good for their business, for what they were doing on their business. So that's the thing, is you need to keep track of, you've got a plan for your business, you've got a future plan for your business, and things come in that change the game plan, and you change your plan. And you need to have your technical team keeping you aware of what technologies might help where your business wants to go. And really their job is to, you know, I've got an old Lincoln Town Car. That's what I drive. And I love it because I can take it anywhere and people can work on it. Anywhere and people can work on it. But I guarantee you 5 years from now, nobody, well, a very small number of people will be able to work on that car, right? And you should be thinking the same way. Right now, that is the most reliable, cheap, easy to repair vehicle there is. When everybody is driving electric cars, and when the mechanics are trained on electric cars, it's going to become a hobby, right?
You better upgrade a little bit earlier, I'm sensing, right? That's where you're leading this conversation, a little bit ahead of time. So listen to
That's
experts,
right.
Yeah, to make educated decision, right?
Exactly. You think ahead. Like for example, right now, I don't have an electric car, and I don't have any way to charge it at my home if I had it. So I would be thinking about, you know, either adding the charging capability to my home in the future, or I buy a different home that has the charging. In your business, it's the same thing.
Yeah, same investment, right? It's sort of
so when the developers say that, oh, this new package is like electric cars, you can say, well, you know, we're not going to switch to electric cars today, but we might in the future. And when you get and prepare the transition plan, because nothing's free, we know that. It does cost to make the transition, absolutely. It's part of doing business, and it's really no different than anything else in your business that you know it's going to. The way that you used to hire people. We used to have, I'm showing my age, Xerox used to send a technician out to change the toner in your Xerox machine. Nobody would do that anymore, right? Now you kind of buy the machine and you either get the supplies or you just replace the machine because it's cheap. Software is the same way. Mm-hmm. No magic. It's just another build, buy, cost benefit analysis thing. But what I want to say is about that conversation that you have with your technical people so that they understand the information that you need, they understand the business value that you need, mm-hmm. You understand the technical, no, forget that. You just need to trust them that when you say we're going to have 1 million users and they say, oh, that means we need to use blah. Mm-hmm. If you don't trust them, you should be hiring them anyway. But make them talk with you about business, right? Because it's all about business. And really that it could be GraphQL that we're talking about. It could be any of these other sexy things that we could be talking about. But they were created for a business reason. If your business looks like that business, yeah, you would probably benefit from it.
John, this is such a great talk we're having today because I've learned a lot, okay? And people who will be watching this, I hope it will answer some questions they're not asking, but they're facing with every day, okay? So what about 3 key takeaways at the end? So what do we want to people know about? Because you spelled it out simply enough. I just want to kind of summarize at the end of the talk. So 3 things: what it is, how to use it, when to use it.
All right, so what it is. GraphQL is a way for your device to tell the server what information it needs and transfer the information back and forth. That's what it is. I'm sorry, what was the second question?
Oh, what it is was first question, how to use it and when and why you need it.
Okay, how to use it. It is programming. So how to use it is really a programming topic. I use it with the JavaScript programming language because that's what works for for my business need. So the how to use it. As a business person, you will never directly use GraphQL. You might have conversations with people. You can also use it. How to use it would be using this thing is called GraphQL to see the data that can be brought back. So use it as a communication tool with your developers. That's really, as a business, that's really the only way that you're going to directly use GraphQL. And then the programmers are going to use it for writing their code. And then the last question was
when and why? Yeah, when and why?
When and why? Well, you should use it all the time because it's really sexy. Oh, wait, you wanted something real. You use it when your business need is similar to the Facebook business need of you need to share information among people at human real time. You need to share notifications. You need to, you need to be transferring information back and forth. Multiple people looking at and pinging on the same data. That's really the when to use it.
Okay, and just answered why, right? This whole time
why?
talked about
why. Because it's really sexy. No.
It's real sexy. That's a good one. Yep.
Well, why? I can only answer my why. Mm-hmm. It matched my business need perfectly. It's, in my opinion, it's clean. It's easy to comprehend. They've done a really good job of sticking to the problem. And that's the why, because it was, it's like any tool. It was the right tool for the job. And it, like any tool, it felt really good in the hand, right? It wasn't just a hammer for pounding nails. It's a hammer that fit really good and worked with the kind of nails I had and stuff like that. So and that should always be the why. The why should be because it's the right tool for the job that you need to do. Unless you're a tool collector,
Exactly. There are those out there too, yeah.
There
John,
you go.
thank you so very much for your time. So any information you want our audience to know about Trules, okay, any upcoming releases, any new news, please send the link. I will put it on description of this video because I want the world to know what Trules is and what John is building nowadays.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I'll take you up on that offer.
Yeah, John, thank you so very, very much. I appreciate it. I appreciate it. Have a wonderful
Thank you, Irene. Have a nice day, and you know, be careful out there. While Irene and I are talking today, we have all of this coronavirus stuff going on. So you know, it's like, be careful out there.
Yes, we do. At this point, I hear that less people will suffer from it, more people will go bankrupt of it. So we're watching.
Yeah, that's very likely. And you know, just back to GraphQL for this shows why your business probably needs really good communication tools. And you know, the need for this remote communication, it's just getting greater every day, and it's becoming more applicable to more businesses every day. And you know, those who planned ahead for this, who do have the ability to have remote solutions for conducting their business, this is why all of those guys and gals and people are talking about, you know, digitalization of your business. This is why it's little situations like this, which can be the difference between you having a hiccup in your business and you having you know, you're out of business. So
absolutely. You know, I look at it as a big driver. This whole situation is a big driver for what we call digital transformation.
It is.
So
it
now people really feel
shows,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
you know, and maybe we weren't good about really communicating this particular need, right? And this particular need is, you know, we do have a reason why we need to self-isolate. We need to avoid contact for health reasons, you know, not just to protect ourselves, but to protect other people. And life has to go on. Business has to go on. And those of us who are in businesses that can be carried out remotely, mm-hmm. we need to figure out how to do that. Now, there are some businesses where you just can't do it. Like I saw that Starbucks, bless them, they're going to pay their baristas more money mm-hmm. because they know about the risk. And I hope that that's being backed up with, you know, insurance and whatnot. I'm getting off the point, but there are some businesses that can't, and there are going to be parts of your business that you can't do remotely. But the parts that you can, a little crisis like this is a wonderful wake-up call for, yeah. And here's why you need to do it. It's not just to increase your business, it's to stay in business when you have situations like this. And you know, thanks to all the folks who have laid all the groundwork. I mean, I guarantee you when Facebook was created, they weren't thinking about something like this, but God bless them, the techniques and technologies that they and others, many others helped foster, we can now use them for this real social good. You know, we've gone beyond social ego networks to social stay alive stuff. And you know, I think it's wonderful how it has worked out, because, you know, Irene and I, we've been in this business a long time, and we're kind of in the business because we think it's going to do good. And this is an example of, yes, done properly, it does good, and it doesn't just do social good, it's business good, it's a win-win. We're all looking for the win-win, and this is a perfect example of a win-win. So if I hadn't already said it a million times before, thank you, Facebook, for not only developing this, but making it available for other people to build on. And thank you to all the other companies out there, like a million of them, who are contributing to open source so that these valuable technologies are getting out there to where the rest of us can use them. So, thank you very much.
John, I
yeah,
definitely applaud to all the entrepreneurs out there, to all the contributors, startuppers, or like you builders, okay, those who see the value and who contribute there. And I'm really optimistic in a way that we human still have that wonderful ability to adapt.
Yes.
Okay?
Yeah.
Do well, right, with tools we have. So I'm really optimistic we're gonna be okay. All right. So despite what's a little bit worrisome news we're getting every day today, but guess what?
We'll get through it. We'll get through it. Not to.
Let's go and build.
We've got to be careful, but
yeah, we have to be careful. But let's go. Yeah, let's keep building because that's how economy is growing. That's how we all actually live better.
Very good. And once again, thank you for communicating with the wider audience, because the wider audience needs to have pardon me. The wider audience needs to have confidence that the technical folks can help them and that what the technical folks are doing can be beneficial to them if they have this open communication back and forth about this is what we need, this is why we need it, and then focus on that, and you'll have a much better chance of getting what you need. And everybody will be happier about it in the long run. In the short run, if you tell me you can't use GraphQL, I'm going to be, But if I know why, and I'm honest to myself, I'm going to go, okay, fine, business decision. I understand business. So, I understand getting a paycheck, right? It's like, if you want to continue getting a paycheck, all right. That kind of thing,
so exactly my goal here was SaugaTalks. So thank you for noticing that. You're welcome to come back when there is another hot topic like good news, bad news you want to bring to the audiences. Absolutely. Because
good news, only good news. We're only going to talk about good news.
Exactly, only good news. So subscribe, watch, comment, engage on SaugaTalks. So we'll know more about topics that worry people. We want more answers. And we have wider range of wonderful guests who are really generous enough to share
and people like me too. So every once in a while.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you, Irene. Have a great day.